Hey everybody, back to Monster, back with Marvel Heroes, and this time we got X-23 on the chopping block. I'm going to do her game day release. So she just got out, and she looks interesting. She's interesting on Test Center, so we'll have to see how she carries over. First thing we'll do is her costumes, and I got on right now one of the special costumes, X-23 X-Force. I liked it. It's one of the special costumes there. See, she got some special glowy red eyes. She's all in black hiding kind of costume there. That's what it looks like from behind. No dirty thoughts now. Then we got the second special costume, which is the Fang costume. I think this kind of reminds me of Wolverine's costume, I think it is. Or was it Black Panther's? Either one. There it is from behind. Then of course we got our classic costume, which I believe is what she comes with. Nice little cut-off t-shirt there. All the costumes look pretty good. And then the other costume I was thinking about going with, which was the X-23 Target X costume. Kind of a little Japanese street punk here. Cut off shorts or skirt or something there. Torn fishnets. That's a pretty interesting look. Kind of liked it. You can buy this costume. This is a secondary costume you can buy. The other two costumes you can't buy. She's got a little sheriff badge. But I do like the glowy red eyes there, so that's kind of a seller for me. Plus she looks all nice and dark and sleek and hiding. So for her stats, she starts off pretty good. I got +3 fighting on from there. We got 3 durability, 4 strength, 4 fighting, 4 speed, 1 intellect, and 1 energy and 3 intellect. Doesn't really need intellect, she's all physical. And so she starts off pretty good. She's got 3 trees. We got Adamantium claws, deadly operative, and lethal acrobatics. So if you couldn't tell, there's definitely a build that leads you towards a Wolverine style of play. And then she's got some movement skills. So these are very interesting. We'll start off with Adamantium claws because we're going to be very familiar with this. And if you hear some extra noise up there, it's the construction still going on. This has been like 4 months now. They're still remodeling. It's a complete remodel of the upstairs, so. But it's okay. It'll give me a warmer house because I'm going to get full insulation. So we got Cleaving Claws. This is your basic attack that gains you Wrath. Wrath, I should say. Wrath is her spirit, basically. It doesn't quite work yet like Spirit, so Spirit generators like Spirit on hit, it gives you a 1-for-1 Wrath, and Wrath is very expensive. It doesn't exactly spend out point for point like Spirit, so they haven't incorporated that quite yet. She's definitely released early. A lot of people kind of upset being released early, and there's even bug notes listed on the release page, and Ralliner was saying she was released and done, so she's not quite done. That aside, she's still good enough. No, I'm not happy that she was released. So Cleaving Claws does your basic attack with a dot twice per second for 3 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times. You know, that's your Wolverine style. These are all going to be Wolverine style attacks. Crimson Sweep does an point blank area attack around you and leaves a vulnerable enemies vulnerable for 10 seconds or 8 seconds, doing 10% extra damage to those enemies. Actually, a very nice attack. Has a 50% chance to apply 1 stack of Cleaving Claws. A little bit different than Wolverine there. We got Rip to Shreds. This is a nice little attack. Does some physical damage per hit for 5 hits. Enemies take 25% extra damage from Cleaving Claw bleeds for 8 seconds. Does a little cone attack. It's got a 4-second cooldown. She's big on having a couple attacks, no matter which builds you kind of go with, of having a 4-second cooldown. Hack and Slash. This is a primary attack that costs Wrath. It does physical damage and then plus 10% damage per stack of Cleaving Claws. And there's ways to get more than just the basic attacks 3. As you can see, you can actually get another stack over here. Bloody Harvest. This is a melee area. Does physical damage twice per second. Regenerate 24 health for each enemy hit. It actually goes up as you level, obviously. An ongoing wrath cost of 54.6 per second. So what that does is it basically spins you around in a circle and you hit everything in the path. Your basic momentum, kind of like the Siberian Charge and Emma Frost's twirl ability, standard twirl attack. We got Disembowel. This is on an 8-second cooldown, but the cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds if you hit a bleeding enemy with this power. So that's what I mean. This is another 4-second cooldown, really, because all your enemies are going to be bleeding if you're using this tree. It does 50 damage, or it does physical damage twice per second. It does some pretty good damage too. And it's got a stun duration, but it costs Wrath. But you're always generating Wrath if you're hitting with this. Then we got Seeing Red. This is a buff. It lasts 8 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. It's a long cooldown with a short duration. Gives you some damage rating, some crit rating. You restore 10 Wrath each time Cleaving Claws bleed effect deals damage. Last time I knew, that was only once per second. It was not like 5 times per second. It reduces the cooldown of Dancing Blades by 5 seconds when you hit with Rip to Shreds or Disembowel. Just so you know, Dancing Blades is going to be your signature attack. Now this signature is pretty awesome. It's a melee movement bleed effect. It does physical damage when it hits. It leaves a bleed on the target, dealing damage twice per second. And it counts as an additional stack of Cleaving Claws bleed effect. That's what I'm saying. You can get additional stacks. It has a cooldown of 25 seconds. And so with this one, you can reduce the cooldown by 5 seconds when you hit with Rip to Shreds or Disembowel. Disembowel was over here. Rip to Shreds was over here. Remember, these are the 4-second cooldown ones. So if you hit this ability and then you hit a target with Disembowel and you hit a target with Rip to Shreds, you just took 10 seconds off of this cooldown, which is why I'm kind of bouncing over here. But that's on a 30-second cooldown, and that's probably why it's on such a long cooldown. Moving over to Deadly Operative, we got Graceful Maneuver. This is your basic charge. You can get out of the way or get into the way of things. It also gives you an attack and movement speed buff for 5.5 seconds. It's not too bad. It's basic. Heart of the Beast. This is a nice little passive. It gives you maximum health, restores health per second, regenerate health when you hit a bleeding target, and when you drop below 50% health, you regenerate extra health per second. And it's a large amount of health per second. And then it has an active effect of the crowd control immunity. So if you're PvPing, this is your crowd control immunity. Pretty good passive. Fluid Stance. You got 2 stances. This is one of the first ones. And obviously, if you turn this stance on, the other stance turns off. This one will give you critical hit rating, projectile deflection chance, damage rating for movement powers, so anything tagged with movement, like your signature. Twirling Lunge has no wrath cost, so it's going to remove the wrath cost of Twirling Lunge. Twirling Lunge is over here. And what that does is it fly into combat with a spinning leap, knocking down all enemies in your path as you move, and it does physical damage. Rending Leap applies stacks of Cleaving Claws bleed effect. So Cleaving Claws is over here. Rending Leap is a lethal acrobatic move. And what that does is you leap around, kind of like Psylocke's Falling Lotus. And it does physical damage. And enemies deal 10% less damage for 8 seconds. And it costs Wrath. And so if you have Fluid Stance on, it also puts a stack of Cleaving Claws bleed effect. The downfall is the damage of twice per second is going to be as whatever rating your Cleaving Claws is. So if you only have 1 point in Cleaving Claws, that's what your damage twice per second is going to be by jumping around with Rending Leap. Cyclone Kick and Open the Jugular damage is increased by 6%. Cyclone Kick is lethal acrobatics. 4-second cooldown. It actually has an 8-second cooldown, but reduce it by 4 seconds if you've used a movement power in the last 10 seconds. So you have to use the movement power first. You can't use it after you've used Cyclone Kick. So use the movement power first, like say Rending Leap, because that's a movement power. And then all of a sudden when you use Cyclone Kick, it's a 4-second cooldown. And this does a good amount of damage 3 times and a circle of point blank area effect around you. And then Open the Jugular, which is the other one, Open the Jugular, increased damage. Has another one on a 4-second cooldown. It knocks enemies down around you. It has Execute, so 1% damage per 1% of target's missing health bonus. And it does a really good point blank area effect again around you, damage physical. And this can only be activated within 4 seconds of using a movement power. So these two kind of tie in together. You're going to use Rending Leap, so this only goes down to a 4-second cooldown. You're going to use this to open up a lot of damage, and then you're going to use this because now you can, because you used a movement power and you just did a lot of damage, so the Execute kicks in. So they kind of tie in together. And you're going to have Fluid Stance on because, well, all these movement powers are tied in. And then when you use a movement power, again tied into movement powers, this Fluid Stance, you and your allies gain dexterity, increasing dodge rating by 180, and that goes up. And you're granting 10% chance to deflect projectiles again. And then we got Ferocious Stance. This is going to tie into Adamantium Claws if you haven't been able to tell. This gives you critical hit rating, defense rating, damage rating, plus 162 for damage over time powers. And then Rip to Shreds and Disembowel have bonus damage. If you remember, Rip to Shreds is this 4-second cooldown ability, which does a pretty good amount of damage to a single target. And Disembowel is this damage, or 8-second cooldown that's reduced by 4 seconds when you hit a bleeding target. And this hits and does serious damage to a single target. And increase the bleed duration of Cleaving Claws by 5 seconds. So this goes from a 3-second bleed to an 8-second bleed, which is just insane. And anything that's tagged as a Cleaving Claw bleed effect, like this on Dancing Blade, also gets that bonus duration. Then when you critically hit or brutally hit, you and your allies gain accuracy, increasing your crit rating and your critical damage rating. And this damage rating and critical damage rating goes up as you level, obviously. We've already covered Dancing Blades, that's the signature. We got Covert Assassin. This is another passive effect with an active effect. So the passive effect is it gives you an 8% chance to completely evade damage from an attack, gives you a large amount of dodge rating per point spent, and gives you damage rating versus enemies not targeting you per point spent. Then if you activate it, it gives you stealth and has a 10-second cooldown. And stealth has a pretty good duration, and that goes up as you spend points. And cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds when you defeat an enemy, so you can stealth around quite a bit if you use it. Now going into lethal acrobatics, we got capoeira. Capoeira is your basic plus damage. It's going to work kind of like versus bosses, but instead it's going to work when you use a movement power. So after 10 seconds of using a movement power, you gain plus 50% damage to this attack, which does physical damage on an attack speed of 2.6 a second. However, it costs a substantial amount of wrath, and without a serious way of lowering wrath costs, you're not going to be able to maintain this very well. We got lethal claws. We already covered cyclone kick. We got lethal claws. This is going to be probably, if you're going to go acrobatics, probably the way to go. You gain again 50% extra damage for 10 seconds when you use a movement power. It again attacks 2.5 seconds, and it does physical damage. Pretty decent physical damage, but most importantly, you gain 90 wrath per hit. That's almost 100 wrath per hit. Every 6 hits, you're going to fill up on wrath. Twirling lunge, we already covered. Open the juggler, we already covered. Rending leap, we already covered. And whirling dervish. This is going to be the opposite buff for seeing red. Also, what I forgot to mention on seeing red is when you hit it, it restores 100% of your maximum wrath. So if you're empty and you need wrath, you can also hit it. And that goes the same for whirling dervish. It restores 100% of your maximum wrath. This gives you damage rating, critical hit, or critical damage rating. It restores 50 wrath when you activate a movement power. So it's going to make some of your movement powers free. And reduce the cooldown of Dancing Blade by 5 seconds when you hit with Cyclone Kick or Open the Juggler. So that's going to be Cyclone Kick and Open the Juggler again, tying into Fluid Stance. The buff duration is 8 seconds and a 30-second cooldown. So it works just the same as seeing red, it just uses the acrobatics instead of the adamantium claws. And then you got trigger scent. I haven't even used this in test center, so this is going to be interesting for me. So you gain double attack speed. All critical hits become brutal strikes. Ooh, people are going to love that. Move speed 50%. Regenerate 100% health instantly. Regenerate health per second. Obviously that's going to go up as you level. And buff duration is 20 seconds and a 10-minute cooldown. Inexplicably become exposed to your trigger scent, which causes you to completely lose control and explode into a ferocious crimson blur of death. Sounds it. So, there she is. That's what X-23 is looking like. She's going to be a ferocious melee fighter or a ferocious jump around melee fighter. Either way, you're going to get into the thick of it with her. She was a little bit squishy. We'll see if that squishiness carried through or not. I haven't seen any of her uniques on live. I had the full kit just about on test center, and I was able to do pretty good with it, so I didn't mind it too much. I just wish they finished her. But that's about it. So I hope it helps. Hope you guys enjoyed, and talk to everybody real soon. I was going to do Clea, but I don't seem to be able to find her. She's grayed out on my list. There's nothing on the splinters, and there's nothing for sale, so I'm not sure what's going on with that yet. So talk to everybody real soon.